Hey, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining our WonderBench webinar. Listen, I hope everyone's doing okay. These are crazy times, and the issues that especially students and recent grads are going through at a level of complexity that I don't think has probably been seen in a generation. And you know, I have the privilege of talking to a lot of students, and I must say I really appreciate the candor and the honesty that I hear from so many of you about how you're working through this. There's some real challenges. There's some kind of hidden hidden blessings and some nicer parts of it. I've also been really taken by the resiliency of so many of you just working through it, right? It's not ideal. There's some challenges in the job market. We look at the unemployment figures. I mean, it doesn't make it easier, but I must say I'm really impressed with the attitude that I hear in so many, and how in time this thing's going to really make people stronger. And so one thing that does not change, a lot is changing right now, but one thing that does not change is that good hard work, there's a way to get it done. And so, our webinar today, Nail It, Deliver Amazing Internship Results, is going to take advantage of some tried and true strategies and tactics that our panelists are expert in. Now, of course, there are some nuances now with working remotely in our current situation that keep it fresh and keep it interesting. But I think this is going to be a terrific discussion. I've been looking forward to it. Thank you so much for coming. Before I begin to introduce the panelists, a couple administrative things. I don't think I need to share with anybody how to use Zoom. I think you're all Zoom experts, but let's keep it interactive. Feel free to jump in with the chat. We're going to have frequently asked questions at the end, but as you have any question, drop them in there. We'll queue them up. Sophia is going to help manage things in the background for us, and we'll hit all those questions, do our best to cover them all. Additionally, we're going to have a poll. In fact, I don't know if you could all hear that. That's my phone ringing. Not something we all want to do in webinar, but somehow it went on. All right. And so let me go ahead and start the poll. And we want to capture your feedback here at the very beginning. And so let me launch the poll. Let me bring up our screen to introduce our panelists. And I'll start with Katie. So it's a real privilege to have Katie Arnold with us. She is the managing director and founder of SPRIG Consulting. She's also a lecturer at Northwestern, the Kellogg Business School, and previously had a wonderful set of experiences at Kenzie Nash. She and I had the privilege of working together, my privilege to work with you, Katie, back at Guidant. How are you doing? How's your work been impacted with everything going on right now?
Thank you, Joe. Happy to be here. Looking forward to the dialogue. So how has my work been impacted? Actually, SPRIG has been working in quarantine for over a decade. So that aspect of working remotely and showing that you can be productive via Zoom, we've been in that type of environment now for a decade. Now that our clients have moved there, though, it has been interesting. We've seen, and I think you'll hear this from the panelists, we've seen some of our clients have had some real struggles because they were bringing products that are considered elective procedures, and those were put on hold. So some of our work with those types of clients were put on hold naturally. But then we've also had a lot of new clients come in who are bringing technologies to market that will benefit the current situation, specifically because I'm in the medical space. We brought 3 new clients on that have gotten what's called the EUA, which is the Emergency Use Act from the FDA. These are products that have been expedited, and we are now, we just did a press release on Monday for a single-use ventilator that we are commercializing and bringing through to the market this month. So there's been some real exciting innovation as well, Joe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's fantastic, Katie. And you know what I mean? The work that you and others are doing in healthcare is what is, you know, it's nice to have heroes right now. And
Yes.
you know, healthcare workers are the heroes. I mean, people doing small things are heroes that allow us to handle life this way. So thank you so much for joining us. And it's actually a nice segue to Olivier because he does work
Yeah.
at one such company as well. I'll let him share more of those details. But Olivier is vice president over Wearable Biosensors. And there's a number of different aspects of R&D that I'll let him describe. We also had the privilege of working together. Previously, he was at another cool medtech company, Proteus, where pill goes inside your body and you can track that through your whole system, as well as other experiences with a PhD in bioengineering from UCSF and Berkeley, early studies at Swarthmore. Olivier, thanks for joining us. Maybe you could share a little bit about what you're doing with VitalConnect and how you're doing.
Yeah, sure. So at VitalConnect, you know, we're developing a patch that you can wear that basically monitors your physiologic vital signs and sends them up to the cloud. So it's a great solution for COVID-19 because it allows to remotely monitor the patients without exposing the healthcare workers to these patients. So there's a lot of interest right now in terms of using our solution in hospitals. That we have engagements with hospitals in New York and Boston, and with the with the HSS group and the government. As Katie mentioned, we actually are one of the companies that has gotten the Emergency Use Authorization Act to accelerate some of the clearances from the FDA to be able to use our solution for this pandemic. So in terms of effect on our work, you know, most of us are working from home. Maybe about 80% of the companies working from home. The key ops people and people who have to actually be at work, maybe it's about 15 people or so. I'm one of the lucky people who gets to work from home. And it is, as Joe mentioned, crazy times. I mean, this is probably the busiest times we've ever had in my 5 years at VitalConnect.
Olivier, thank you so much for joining. Let me move on to Nigel Smith. Nigel Smith heads up Next Step Communications, nicely displayed there. Good branding in the background. Always like that from a marketer. Alumni from UMass Amherst, also is an advisor through their advisory board in their communications department, and previously had all sorts of terrific communications experience with Race Point Group, Schwartz, which is top firm, and so on. Nigel, just before this call, you were mentioning that you have an intern coming, and I know we have a lot of students on the call who are either trying to get an internship or planning for an internship they just landed, and I know you've been thinking about that. Maybe you could share a few initial thoughts. Of course, we're going to get much more into it.
Sure. Similar to Katie, sort of a marketing healthcare agency. Unlike Katie, we are a group of 9 people who fight at the coffee pot every morning, right? So we are in person, we are in office, and every other Friday we have work from home kind of stuff. So this is a very different world for us because we haven't proven how efficient we can be. And we're quickly learning how to do it. And to Joe's point about an intern, so we're in Boston and our intern lives in Connecticut, and she goes, or our summer intern lives in Connecticut, and she goes to Vanderbilt. And her original plan was to sofa surf on her brothers in Boston and spend time in our office. Yeah. But obviously that's not happening. So we're trying to figure out, can we offer an experience? And we think of the internship as our way to convince someone that getting involved in healthcare marketing is a very solid career choice. Yes. I mean, I'm hugely passionate about this space, as is everyone here, about, you know, trying to do noble work where the kinds of things that we do are about helping improve either efficiencies in a hospital or to help improve people's lives. my brother's a senior technologist, and I don't give two blanks what he does with cloud storage. It just doesn't help me on a Monday morning get out of bed. But what we do as it relates to helping either sort of people in my family, my neighbors, people I don't know but who are dealing with health issues could actually live a better life, I find that really noble. So to Joe's point, we're trying to figure out how we can have a virtual remote intern when so much of what we've done with our 16 previous interns is get them excited about the collaborative nature and really dive into what we do. So new times for us as well.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, Nigel, thanks. And you know what? You may have to thank your brother for that cloud technology that'll allow you to work with that remote internship. So it is interesting, some of this platform technology that's really driving some of the new capabilities. So very cool. Listen, in our final panelist, saving the best for last, we have Monica Chen. She is working in marketing at Ajora, has done work as well in a yoga studio doing some marketing, recently graduated in last year from Columbia University, had a number of great experiences, including working for the district attorney in New York. Monica, I know we've had a chance to talk about some of your great experiences there. How are you doing? And congrats on your new job. How's it going working remotely for you?
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So, you know, working remotely has surprisingly been good for me, but perhaps that's because the current role I work in, I'm just communicating with one other person, and we have daily meetings, so we keep on track pretty well. So that's been going well, and it's interesting. We have been discussing whether we would go directly back into the office right after shelter in place has ended. And that's just because, you know, for the safety of everybody else, you know, our families who we live with, and also because we are doing a pretty good job right now with remote work. So that's the current status I'm in right now.
Yeah, well, that's great. You know, and it's, boy, it was surprising for me yesterday to see Twitter say that they may stay remote forever. So you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people are having a good experience, figuring it out, and see some benefits. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all unfolds. Let me go ahead and stop sharing the screen, and let's end the poll. I see many of you have responded. Let's take a look at these results. And so I'm going to share them now, and we'll kind of page through them and I'll ask the panelists to comment a bit on some of these as well. So thank you for letting us know your backgrounds. We do have software engineering, marketing, and a number of people in other. Feel free on the comments to let us know you know, what the other is, and Sophia, you may you know, you might chime in at some point and let us know more about that. And also thank you for letting us know how you're doing in the job search. And this is not surprising. A couple of people have locked it down. Most people are continuing to look, and few people have stopped. So I'm happy to see that, actually. I think it's taking companies a bit of time here to figure out what to do. There's been a lot of internships canceled, as I've discussed with many of you. Let me ask the panelists, especially Nigel, Olivier, Katie, do you have conversations with others? What do you think? What do you think the likelihood is that more internships will show up as we live longer in a remote environment? Do you think, you know, I know the jobs that I'm filling, we have incredible numbers of applicants. Do you think that the supply of internships may increase as people settle into this remote working and maybe get more comfortable, like Nigel, you said earlier, you did, with potentially having a remote intern? What are all of your thoughts? Katie, I'll go to you first.
Okay, you know, so I think that yes is the answer. I think companies are going to get more comfortable with the fact that people can actually contribute while working remotely. To me, the question was always on the other side, because as I shared, my company's always been remote, that it's been more difficult to kind of secure a student because they always wanted that in-person interaction.
Yeah.
And so really, actually, this is a really great time for companies and students to kind of prove both that it can work.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it is going to become, just like we're starting to see many things are now becoming a new norm, telemedicine or just more stuff being done remote,
Right.
if you will. We are changing our lifestyle, and I think we are going to see that it is going to impact internships. And if students are welcome to being more remote, especially in today's world, you might not have as much of a choice, but if you can show you can do it and it works, then I think this could be, we'll see more internships coming.
Yeah, Katie, that's a great point, and it kind of raises for me one other question, which is there something attractive when it can be remote about now being able to source the best person from anywhere? So you're not limited perhaps to geography. I wonder if there's the chance of even bringing in stronger talent. What do you think about that?
Yes. The thing, honestly, that will challenge that is sometimes the time zones. So I've got colleagues that are over in Europe and Israel, and there's so much great innovation happening there. But when we try to connect them with some of our clients that are on the West Coast, there's only like a 2 to 3 hour time frame window sometimes.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, a lot of folks in India and elsewhere are becoming more flexible with working into later hours in the evening. And maybe that's also a Mediterranean lifestyle too for some of those countries. But I do think the fact that we can tap resources globally as well as across the country, the biggest hurdle is the time zones for the live meetups.
Great point. Olivier, from a software engineering standpoint, what's your perspective on it? Do you see good value in this remote working? Can it work in software engineering, and whether it's UI, UX, or coding? What's your take?
Yeah, so absolutely. I think even before the COVID-19 showed up, the software engineers are probably the people who are already taking advantage of working from home in our company. I mean, there's some jobs where you have to be on land or in place, but the software engineers definitely fits perfectly. Remote working from home is perfect for software engineers. It's already been done for many years, and I think it's actually spreading throughout the company now. So it's interesting to see how with Zoom and Slack, we can all stay really connected at our computers, and it's a little bit scary to see how well we function even without the in-face personal interaction, because we had put so much emphasis on that before.
Yeah.
But actually, it can be very efficient even without the face-to-face. I think like using Zoom, and so I think I can't speak to the marketing or the other, but the software engineers would definitely have a very smooth transition over to remote monitoring, remote workplace.
Yeah, it's great. Let's go back and look at a couple other of these questions from the poll. So. Makes sense. Everyone's working from home. There's nothing really at the office or job site. States are opening up, but not that much, is maybe a takeaway from that. In terms of how prepared people feel, it looks like there's a range, and I'd welcome the comments on this, on the responses here. So we have some people who feel really well prepared, others that have some prep left. A few people saying, I hope they come with a detailed plan that shows me everything and what needs to be done. What kind of expectations are reasonable, I guess, for the students as they take a role, whether it's an internship or a graduate position, with respect to how detailed a plan is likely to be, let's say in marketing? Nigel, let me go to you. Is that something that you're gonna give a real detailed plan, or how much guidance do you typically give, or maybe even this year with a remote intern, are you expecting to give, and how much are you expecting the person to figure it out? Nigel, you're on mute.
me. I think you muted us all. Anyway, hopefully I'm back. So I think that's the reason why we are struggling to figure out what the internship is going to be. Sorry, we had a little prep call and I shared this already, but I think of each intern experience as 3 phases. Phase 1 is the intern is just sponging, getting value, cutting their teeth, getting a sense of what an agency feels like. Month 1. Month 2, hopefully they're picking some things up and understanding the process and the workflow, and that they're contributing to some degree, or like it's getting a little easier. Then on the 3rd phase, they're actually contributing. I mean, if we're paying, small businesses are paying for interns, you hope you're getting something in return. Otherwise, I should just write a check on day 1 and say, here, make up an inch on your resume. Here's some money and go have fun. Like, I should get something out of the deal as well. And that's when you really figure out, like, is this a good internship? So no, you've got to figure it out on your own a little bit. It's not, I mean, for at least a small agency, they're going to try and help you because there probably is existing curriculum for how they walk people through when they're in the office. We have orientation programs.
Yeah.
But I don't know how well orientation programs are going to relate remotely. And so for us, that's the challenge. And I will say that we narrowed down and made our selection of an intern is to someone who's already sort of done this a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe not at an agency, but in-house. So the terminology and the expectations of the work, I'm more comfortable that she's going to understand and speak the language a bit more than someone who just doesn't answer what's public relations and their answer is relating to the public, right? They have something more to offer already. So I think it's going to be more on the student, at least in an environment like this where remote might be the first time they've had an intern.
It's great. Monica, you're someone who's been navigating this successfully. And as you said earlier, you've been finding a way to do things remotely. What do you think? How do you approach this with the planning? Because I think most of us, or many people, might love to get a fully detailed plan, but that's often not going to be the case. How do you manage that, Monica?
I think for me, it was a lot of perseverance. I didn't have a plan initially, but eventually I made one that was helpful, which is actually giving myself a number of hours minimum that I would put in each day, but also recognizing on days that I burn out that it's okay, I rest for that day. And I think that's especially important right now if you're still looking for a job, because it's a hard market. A lot of companies are not hiring, right? And there's a lot more competition as well. And especially in this current period, a lot of people are graduating. So there's a lot more job seekers, internship seekers. So really don't feel bad if you burn out, but also be responsible and give yourself like a couple hours each day that you're gonna work on job search. Yeah. And for me, I think the resume was really key. My final resume, it got so many replies back. And so I would highly recommend to constantly revise your resume, maybe even do A/B testing and see how many responses you get, and make sure you send out a lot. And that was sort of my plan. And that's how I got the current role I'm currently in.
Yeah, Monica, that's great. And we actually covered on a prior webinar, Juice Up Your Job app, that, it's often the case it takes between 100 and 200 applications to land the role. And sometimes, it's hard to realize that. And I've been having conversations with people. How do you make sure they all stay strong and that the quality of them is high when you're doing so many? So I wanted to ask on the jobs that you've actually gotten when you've been working remotely, how have you handled this part of planning where maybe the manager gives you some direction, but then there's a fair bit of direction that you just need to, you need to work out that plan yourself? What are some good questions perhaps that you've been able to ask companies and managers so you can get what you need, so you can do some planning of your own work if the manager, say, doesn't have time to provide, all of the details?
Okay, I think that would be, I think I asked a lot of questions during the interview and then on the first few days when I started the job. And some of those questions were actually related to the company, its history, what its goals are, what are the goals for the next month, next few months. And I asked data related questions such as, what are the active users right now? And what's, essentially the KPI that you guys are working on. How has it increased in the past months, past years, stuff like that, to get a sense of how the growth is, and also asking questions about what's been done before and what's worked and what hasn't, especially for marketing, because I'm going to be responsible for creating these marketing campaigns and really increasing the growth for the company. So those are some essential questions that I asked.
Monica, that makes so much sense to me. And in the end, I think reflecting on what Nigel was saying, there are some results, right, that the company needs to see, both for the sake of their business, also in evaluating a candidate. Reflecting on this last question in the poll, a lot of people want to learn today, get some more information on how to finish well. And I think, to your point, Monica, understanding your manager's goals, understanding the company's goals, and somehow helping them advance, those are key. I'd love to get both Katie and then Olivier's perspective on that, both with respect to marketing and software engineering. Katie, why don't you, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts first.
Yeah, sure, I'd be happy to. So one of the things that I would say about your internship is that certainly, you want to every day be present and be strong, but it's also a great opportunity in a way to take some risks personally. And what I mean by that is thinking outside the box in your internship can be very powerful for you, but also for the company to see how you may approach things differently. When you're brought on to a job full time, it's a little bit hard to be taking some of those risks. But I think people do want to be able to see perhaps how you could take things to the next level. So I always encourage students that I work with at Northwestern to take the opportunity, obviously within reason, to take some risks during your internship and to really push the envelope, to think outside of the boundaries on the projects and maybe bring in some suggestions and perspectives in your project that might be unconventional. So that can be very meaningful in an internship because folks in the company don't always have time to think outside the box about how they might get news out on treatment for a new hypertension drug, or how they might integrate in certain new marketing channels within a campaign for a product. So be adventurous, be brave, take risks. I want to mention that to answer that question, but I also want to just, right now, keep in mind that companies and the economy are in a situation of they're in a pause. Things are on hold. Jobs will come back. Internships will be plentiful. While we are on this hold right now and you might not be getting opportunities, use this time to network. Networking can be so powerful for you right now and in the future. And I would also encourage you, when you have your internship, look around and network with people within the company. In fact, Joe, I think that's when I first met you, was when, during one of a networking. Notice people that are doing things, set up lunches with them, set up meetings. Yeah. This is always at your internship, or even right now, network with family friends, network with your friends. What are people doing? Keep yourself active, stay curious, stay inquisitive. It will open doors for you. I always tell students that I work with, I am an eternal networker. You always want to be networking. There's never a time you're not networking. In fact, that's why we're doing this webinar, right? It's a form of networking, getting to know people, listening to them. So network, maybe volunteer right now. There's such a need to volunteer, and then as Monica said, keep your job search going. So you can still be active right now if you don't maybe have a job in hand. There's things you can be doing to at least keep your brain going and to make sure that you're moving forward.
Yeah, Katie, those are terrific words. It helps explain why you were the leader of a firm that navigates, different kinds of times, good times and bad times. You have vision and courage, which is so essential, so great. Olivier, love to hear your perspective on how you'd like a remote intern to engage, and what are the things that give you confidence that strong results are going to come as a result of their work.
Yeah, so I think that, looking back on the internships that I've been involved with, you have to look at it as it really needs to be a win-win situation, right? The company wants you to add value to the projects, and at the same time, as an intern, you want to gain valuable experience. So going into the internship, and having a clear sort of a mini project start to finish, I think is really key to success. And each of the interns that lately I've had we had a very clear goal that was going to be set, like in 3 months, you're going to reach this goal. And we framed the project so that it had sort of it was time boxed, and also it had a really clear start finish. And so that then I know that when they left the company, they'd have a very clear experience that they can point to and have gained some valuable skills. For the company side, I found that it's very helpful when a person comes in with at least some type of skill that they can leverage. So for the software engineers, maybe you know a little bit of Python or language, or maybe you know a little bit of MATLAB, and you can figure out a project which would allow you to really master that skill, and at the same time provide that value to the company. Because it's hard if you come in as a completely blank slate, but if you can find an internship that leverages one of your skill sets, then it's much better for everyone, for both the company and for you. To Katie's point about the pause, I think that it is sometimes a little scary when you come out of college and you feel like, I need to get that internship right away. I need to get going. I can't stand pause. But you have a long career ahead of you, and this one summer of pandemic, or maybe it's going to probably extend to at least a year of a pause, is actually a very short period of time in your overall lifetime, of the career. So don't be so worried about not getting a jump start on that internship. I think there's a lot of other things Katie mentioned, like volunteering. I would even propose maybe learn another language, or a musical skill, or enhance some of your coding skills, or there's engineering online courses you can take. There's lots of things you can do during this pause.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, one thing I'm seeing as Wonderbench fills roles is that so many people apply that you can essentially wait until you find a person that can check every box on that job description. And so for all of us, I've been talking to a lot of students about this, find the jobs you want and put yourself in a position to check every box. So figure out the boxes that you may not quite be able to check yet, and do some work so that you can, find a certain set of jobs where you check those boxes. Nigel, it sounded like you had some comments.
So I try and be as direct as possible when I'm meeting with the students out in Amherst. And I try and remind you that you are in sales. Let's just be honest. You're in sales, just like doctors are in sales and journalists are in sales. You're in sales. So a journalist is in sales today because if they don't write content that he or she's editor can look on the clicks and see, do people actually read it and how long they're actually reading their piece. If people aren't clicking on it, you're not a good journalist. You got to figure out how to find the content that someone wants to actually read. A doctor. People go to doctors because they know how to treat a certain condition. They go to attorneys. How good are you at X, Y, or Z? Are you the right attorney? They're in sales. So you have to think about selling yourself. And I look at what Katie was saying, take a pause. Well, fine, you might not have an internship at a medical integrated marketing firm. Great. Well, but you know who could use an internship? Is a company that just did layoffs, right? You could call this, don't pay me. I don't care if you pay me. I'm looking for 10 hours a week or something like that. Sell yourself. Work for a shelter, work for something, because the next resume or the next person who looks at your resume, whether next fall or whatever, is going to say, how inventive was this person's character? What did they do? Because the subject matter is not, well, Olivier, your world is very technical, but for a liberal arts major, so we know a lot about an inch deep and 15 miles wide, we can learn a subject matter pretty quickly. But what's harder is the intuitiveness, the resourcefulness, the willingness to go sell yourself and differentiate yourself. I don't care if a PR person has wonderful experience doing something for a local ice cream shop. They understand how to do it, and that translates really well. And I think those are things that you could be looking for, even if it's not the perfect fit. Because you know what? In the last 60 days, things are completely different. And on the other side of this, people are just going to say the bigger question, just like every college app's going to be, what did you do during your pandemic? What did you do during your quarantine? And you better have an answer. The answer can't be, I watched the 3rd season of Ozark on Monday, so then I did, Joe Tiger on Tuesdays. Like, you're going to have to come up with something better. And you better have a story to tell. And you better be able to sell how you took advantage of any opportunity and you found an opportunity. Because that's really what shows the chutzpah that Katie was talking about earlier, is bringing value. That's what people want to hear.
Yeah. Where's your passion, Nigel? Where's your passion?
I'll tell you what it is. I tell you the Monday morning test. You have to be able to get your feet out of bed on Monday morning. And you better, and I hear all these people, oh, my dream job coming out of college. Well, you don't know a darn thing about your dream job. You better get some experience and figure out, like, wow, I really hate this. I hate this so much. I can't believe I wanted to work for Salesforce. What a disaster that was. I want to go work at a yoga studio. That's what I really want to do. And that's going to take some real world experience to tell you what you want to do. And I think about that as the ultimate. If you can get out of bed on Monday morning, get fired up to go to work, deal with, down the road, perhaps you'll have kids and other issues and sick parents, but that to me is the passion. You better like what you do on Monday mornings.
Yeah, no, thank you, Nigel. All right, listen, in a few minutes, I want to play Stump the Panelists. And so for everyone in the audience, go ahead and start shooting in your questions. Let's really stump them. I mean, Nigel's a lot to say. Let's challenge Nigel and the rest of them. But in the interim, while you are beginning to send those in, a couple of questions. So I heard some nice game plans of, if you have 3 months, you're going to go through 3 phases, kind of the inquiry learning stage, and then you're getting your feet under you and you finally hit results. What if in a micro-internship, you have 3 weeks, right? So what if you have micro-internship and you actually need to produce something in 3 weeks and you need to do it remotely? So maybe the game has some new challenge, some different elements. How would you approach that? If that was you, Katie, what would you do if that was your situation? You landed it, now you got 3 weeks. Let's say 3 weeks with SPRIG Consulting. Someone, found some job. What would you advise that person to do so they can
Yeah, I mean, definitely be clear on the deliverable that they're going at the end of the 3 weeks. What is it that I want them to deliver on, so that they know every single day they're marching towards that exact deliverable. Perhaps ask for examples of deliverables that you can review. Seeing work product or seeing other case studies of what you're doing that might not be the exact same, but stuff that you can leverage so that you know what it is that you need to do. And then every day I would set that game plan, what you're going to do, map out each day how you're going to achieve it. Talk to people within the team or within that industry that or that kind of therapeutic area, like in my specific situation. Get to know it well. Do as much what we say primary market research as you can. And again, you can also think of that as networking. Get to know people, get talking, ask your questions. So 3 weeks is a tight turnaround. I would say that is a bit aggressive, but I have pulled students to work on projects that I have at SPRIG, and I'm always impressed because at that age, you don't have children, you don't have maybe the other external factors perhaps that are pulling on you. So you have that ability to be nocturnal. And so just, leverage your youth, work really hard, but be very clear on that deliverable.
Yeah, thank you, Katie. Olivier, other thoughts on managing tighter timelines, managing things remote? You hire someone, what are signs, say in the first week, Olivier, that it's not going well? What would be the situation at the end of the first week where you're kind of wondering if you're ready for the next 2 weeks? What would that look like, just to see the opposite of what we're all targeting?
In a micro-internship situation, you wouldn't have any time to really train something. You'd have to come in and hit the ground running. So you'd have to already have the skill sets you need. Like, for example, at least have some proficiency in, so let's say I need a mechanical designer, and so it's some proficiency in SolidWorks CAD packaging where they could just start designing right away. So within the first week, if they were still struggling to open the first file, that might be a red flag. I also think that in a micro internship, considering the time, you probably expect to work through the weekends. I mean, don't expect to get your weekends in, especially it's weird in this time of COVID-19. The weekend comes and nobody has any plans for the weekend. So we just basically just keep working and communicating. So I would expect that to be the norm for especially for a micro internship.
Yeah, Monica, your thoughts on if you were given a really tight timeline, new company, how would you approach that? What would you do differently to, ensure success?
I think I would do all the things that Katie mentioned earlier. And in addition to that, I would set meetings of some sort to check in with who I'm working with, to make sure that whatever I'm working on is looking good. If there's any changes that need to be made, it can be made now instead of way later into the project. So that way we can ensure the best end product. And of course, put all your effort into it. And, I would go above and beyond if I can, because this is going to be something that you can also put on your resume, right? And it's going to be a project that you can present to people and be proud of. And the more you put into something, the more you're going to learn and get out of it. That's something very important that I've learned from my previous experiences. So that's what I would do.
Let me ask a question to the group about communication. So obviously, it's more challenging in a remote situation to get to know people in the way that you might like to. And it even could be a fair bit different at work than what students may be used to among themselves at school with Instagram, and maybe, the ways that students interact and get to know each other could be a little bit different from work. What advice would you have of how, say during week one, the intern could, begin to get to know their colleagues, the folks at the company? What would be appropriate? And Katie, I think even to your comments earlier, maybe some, aggressive ways to get to know people, networking that would really, be appropriate in the workplace as a remote intern.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think right now we are limited a bit to those just 30-minute Zoom calls.
Yeah.
And so I think though, reaching out to folks proactively, setting up those calls. I would encourage you though, in communications back into your team or on projects, to have, obviously you're always wanting to manage up. So you need to be touching base with folks to make sure that you are hitting on things and you're progressing appropriately. But I would also caution you, don't make your emails, a fire hydrant of like too much information. We don't have time to read that. I even encourage that with my team back to clients. Things have got to be sound bites of information that at the highest level, what is it that you're trying to say? Give some maybe background information. And then maybe if you have to set up a call to, 10 minutes of clarification, but try to be as concise right now as possible, especially if you only have that 3-week window of, don't ramble, be concise. So I would encourage communications to be nice little sound bites.
Yeah, great. Olivier, what perspective do you have on that? What would be ways for a remote person to connect quickly?
I totally agree. On the Zoom call, maybe like a 10-minute Zoom call with one-on-one with each of the other team members within your first days of starting the internship, just to get the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
great idea.
yeah, Monica, your thoughts? What any other ways that you've been, even with your new job, connecting and making sure that you stay connected?
Right. I think just making sure that you're in constant communication. And since I have meetings every day, that's not been hard to do. But right, like Katie said, when I'm sending an email or, I even text the guy that I work with, I keep it short and I save the longer things, the more discussion-based items for our meetings.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nigel, any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, all I would say is within communicating, you can't be afraid to ask questions. I certainly for that, asking a thoughtful question demonstrates how you're thinking about your project. And to me, that's really important. Silence is scary because you don't really know what the intern is working on remotely. And that's one of our challenges, because you don't get that ability to sit in on a meeting, on a conference call, and just absorb the experience on Zoom, because how are you going to have that? It just becomes a little more challenging. And the other thing I would say is, if an organization is offering an internship, they want to be helping you. They wouldn't have interns unless they were committed to the art of an intern and wanting to give back and helping pull someone into the industry. They're not just looking for free labor. They want to help you learn something. So I would just add, it's important to ask really good questions and thoughtful questions. That'll help you sort of, wow, that person was inquisitive. And that might really help with your networking as well, because you're asking smart questions that people were like, that's cool. That person's really trying to engage in the work.
And just to add to that, if I could, Joe, you might want to, I know internships could be an opportunity where you might want to be stretching your skill or learning a new skill. I would perhaps encourage you, if you only have these micro-internships, to perhaps lean towards ones of something that you feel really comfortable doing or you've already done.
Yeah.
Because during that 3 weeks, you want to hit a home run. And stretching yourself in something you haven't done before, it might not be that time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Sophie, I think I see some questions coming in. Do you want to go ahead and bring the first one?
Yeah, so Katie, you said networking never really ends. What are some of the best ways you network with people? Can you just go more into detail on the best places to network with people kind of outside your circle of connections that you may already have?
Sure. That's a great question. So there's a couple of things that come to mind. So in my industry, we are constantly hearing news about companies getting product approval or companies hitting milestones. Whenever I read that news, if I know someone within that company, I'm going to use that as an excuse to reach out and to congratulate them. So I'm taking that opportunity to actually then bring it forward and make a connection. And perhaps if time is right, just set up a quick call. I also, in our industry, we have a lot of conferences. And so I'm very, prior to that conference, setting up a very busy agenda for that week. Obviously with spring and it looks like moving into the summer, all those conferences are sadly getting canceled. So I'm having to be very creative about how I stay current and in touch with people. Because think about it, for me, networking, you guys are thinking about your next job. When you run a consulting company, or Nigel and myself, we have to be thinking about that next project. So we are constantly filling the pipeline and constantly networking. So don't be afraid to always reach out and stay connected with people. And social media right now is great. I will say there's a couple of students that I teach, and if most of you are students or within that environment, probably one of the best things you can do is to create relationships with professors. So reach out to professors, stay connected. I still have some of my students who've now moved on to their professional roles, quarterly reach out and just give me an update with what they're doing, because I might know of another opportunity for them. So stay connected with people also in your, in your academia life as well. And then certainly your fellow peers are great people to network with as they move into jobs. Stay connected with them. Social media has brought it, LinkedIn, certainly from a professional standpoint. I'm on LinkedIn every day, checking, congratulating, liking, mentioning, commenting. So it is an important tool to do. So yeah. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you, Katie. It's great. Sophie, why don't you bring in the next question? I see they're coming in now.
All right. What are some of the most critical soft skills when that you find are essential for internships?
Nigel, what are your thoughts?
I think there's a body language about how badly you are interested in the topic. Like, I've had people come in for interviews who really weren't interested in healthcare. They were just looking for an internship that was close to them, like to their parents' house or something like that. I mean, like, that's such a miss, and that's such a bad sort of feel to it. And I just am like, why are you here? And I say that to them, like, and they've done no homework. They haven't done any research about our clients. It's just such a whiff. And I just sit there and I'm like, guys, you got to do better. You're in sales. I tell them that. Very similar to what Katie was saying. You do your periodic recap of what you've been doing. Sell your experiences back so that they can be, it's a reason to reconnect and network. So I think real legitimate hunger, interest, and sort of body language is like, I really want this. That kind of soft skills are really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent. Olivier, any other thoughts on that? Software engineering, soft skills, what are you looking for?
Yeah, I can follow up on what Nigel said. You really show that you care about the company, because the person interviewing obviously cares about where they work. So you have to come in with, make sure you have the background knowledge of the company, like make sure you know their website inside and out. And the other thing is, when it's time at the end of the interview and they ask you, do you have any questions? Please make sure you have some questions to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, Sophia, how about the next question?
All right, Monica, from a recent graduate perspective, what is the most challenging part of starting a new job? Do you find it difficult transferring from the student to employee role?
Okay, so my first job was at the district attorney's office. And I would say what was challenging for me was that perhaps the mindset. It's different because you're no longer an intern anymore. You're officially hired and you are expected to stay and do a really good job, and that's I don't know, I feel like the challenging parts for me were more like life-based than the role, actually. But for me, it was like really making a good connection with my manager, perhaps, which I did do a good job on. I still keep in touch with my manager from there, which is great. And so as for what was difficult transferring from student to employee, it was more like life-based. You have to worry more about your financials, or at least for myself, I did. And perhaps the commute, because I stayed in New York City and I was living in Brooklyn at the time, and I had to commute into Manhattan for my role. So that was a little different than from school or from an internship where you can kind of plan ahead of time where you live.
Okay. Listen, I want to give one final question to all the professional panelists. You know, you've had interns, you've hired interns, you've had some that you gave offers to, and you have others, I'm sure you did not. What makes the difference? Why do you give an offer? Katie.
I think the willingness of people to want to learn, to always be curious, and yes, to come forward with having done the research, but also not be a know-it-all. So be humble. I think that that also is a good, being that team player. So somebody that can, certainly, gel in with the team, is always wanting to be curious and learn something, is open to feedback and listening. And then, just overall is, I have to admit, is also a type A personality. They're not going to let something go out the door to a client or for that final deliverable that didn't pass the kind of, the muster of everything being just perfect. So at the end of the day, it does have to reflect a very high level of a standard. And so if people can kind of carry all of that in one package, they're welcome to join the team.
That's great. Nigel.
It's a business. This is money out of my pocket, right? You better contribute. If we're paying you as a full-time employee, that impacts bonus pools. This is money. This is real money. You got to earn it. And I fired interns because they were too interested in their Instas and their Snaps and their TikToks. And it's like, get out. I don't care. Like, I'm paying you. Like, don't forget that. So very similar to your question about what's the hardest transition from school or sort of the collegiate life to work, is your phone's not going to be in your hand all day long unless that's part of your job. Like you're going to have to learn that's not how this works in the real life. Your parents probably aren't grazing, their fun social streams all day long, because that's not how it works. So those are things, those who understand that it's a business, and the more they dive in, they're going to see how and why others succeed. And that's when you're off and running. They just have to realize it's a different environment. And when they do that, it's not that hard.
Yeah. Thank you. Clear. Olivier.
Yeah, so I think that, so I have a list here. If you're self-motivated, enthusiastic, creative, hardworking, and a good communicator, you'll probably get an offer from me at the end of your internship. Because in that case, it's probably been, you've probably put in a lot of work, and by just showing your enthusiasm and being able to actually problem solve and being a value add, you will be in a position to get the job offer. On the other hand, I'm thinking about the worst internship I had, which I had 2 interns, and they were totally unproductive. At the end, they actually got married. So I think for them, it was probably the best internship ever. For me, it was the worst internship, but it explained a lot. So that's what happens. If you're gonna get married, you're probably not gonna get the offer.
Yeah, so life is important, but the work has to,
That's right.
has to achieve some great results for it to work out. Monica, you are, it hasn't been very long since you were in the shoes of most of our attendees in school, and certainly we have some who are out. What would be your final advice to this group to, have success and to get to the place where you are, where you're, finding good opportunities and delivering to them? What party words would you have for the group, Monica?
I would say stay active and don't give up. And as for staying active, we have a lot of resources online. Learn something new, grow your skills, because that's going to be important for any role you have in the future. And just keep going, keep moving forward, because I think if you give up, you're not going to get anywhere, and that's when you can say you have failed, right? Otherwise, don't beat yourself up for not having an internship or anything like that. Give yourself a pat on the back for moving forward.
Yeah, no, that's right. These are not easy times, and small victories need to be celebrated, right? And small victories accumulated become big victories. So listen, let me take this moment to thank everybody for joining. We know that you're really busy, and so we appreciate your time. I wanted to especially thank Olivier, Monica, Nigel, Katie. Thank you for your time. Sophie in the background, it's been a real pleasure. Some of you I hadn't seen in a long time, so it's a delight for me. But thank you for your time and for this discussion. Hope everyone has a great rest of the day. Stay safe. Thanks.
All right.
Everybody.
Bye, guys.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Thank you.